I want you to do something for me. Like right now, wherever you are listening to this, I want you to look around and just, mentally strip it all away.
Just completely erase it.
Yeah, exactly. The walls of the room you're in, the device you're listening on, the clothes you're wearing, strip away the roads outside, the cities, the organized religions, the languages we use to communicate.
But that is a lot to strip away.
Right. But I want you to erase it all until there is absolutely nothing left but dense, imposing forests and like raging, untamed rivers and just massive mountains.
Just total unfiltered wilderness.
Exactly. You are standing there and you are surrounded by constant hidden dangers in every direction. I want you to paint that vivid picture in your mind of early humanity. You are entirely vulnerable. You are terrified. But underneath that terror, you are also deeply, remarkably curious.
It is a really jarring mental reset, honestly. We are so insulated by our modern conveniences that we completely forget our origins as a profoundly vulnerable prey species.
Oh, 100%. We were absolutely prey.
We were. There were no safety nets, no infrastructure, no guarantee of a tomorrow. We are talking about millions of years where daily existence was raw, unfiltered survival against natural elements that were entirely indifferent to whether a human lived or died.
Yeah, the cognitive load of just trying not to be eaten or freeze to death dictated every waking moment.
Absolutely.
And welcome to this deep dive where that terrifying mental image is just our starting line. Today, our source material, which is going to be our map for this exploration, is a fascinating historical broadcast titled The Dawn of Human Civilization, From Stones to Societies.
This is a fantastic source. Really lays it all out.
It really does. And our mission today is to trace this unbelievable, chaotic, and frankly, heavily cyclical journey. We're going to track the exact mechanisms of how we went from merely surviving those harsh elements, just trying to make it to the next sunrise, to actually sitting around, building complex societies, and searching for the meaning of life itself.
It is arguably the greatest story ever told, primarily because it just defies probability. This wasn't a gentle, inevitable upward slope of progress.
No, not at all.
We are looking at a creature that was initially just another link in the food chain, reacting passively to the world, and we are going to unpack how that specific hominid slowly and painfully learned to manipulate the physical laws of the planet.
And we're going to get into the mechanics of all of it. Because before we could build cities, before we could even think about philosophy or art, we just had to survive the night.
Right.
That brings us to the absolute baseline of our existence, which is the Stone Age. We were nomadic, seeking temporary shelter in caves, scavenging, and entirely at the mercy of shifting weather patterns and apex predators.
Right, and the first major shift in this power dynamic wasn't biological, it was mechanical. The moment a human intentionally fractured a stone to create a sharp edge, they externalized their evolution.
We've journalized it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to wait a million years to evolve sharper teeth or stronger claws. They manufactured them. That sharpened stone is the first tangible evidence of human ingenuity altering the immediate environment to make survival just a fraction of a percent easier.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because having a sharp rock is, it's a massive advantage for cutting hides or butchering scavenged meat, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But it doesn't fundamentally change the broader rules of the game. You are still freezing in the winter. You are still spending hours chewing raw, tough calories.
Very spill prey.
Exactly. But then the real cognitive leap happens. I look at the mastery of fire like humanity's very first major cheat code. We saw it in lightning strikes, but learning to control it was like downloading a massive software update.
What's fascinating here is that controlling fire was the very first time humanity took a force of nature and bent it to its will. We shifted from being subjects of nature to masters of it.
Which is a huge psychological shift.
Massive. But it wasn't just about warding off predators in the dark or staying warm, though obviously those were huge upgrades to our survival rate. Yeah.
The
true revolution, the thing that actually changed our physical bodies, was cooking.
Cooking food.
Yes. Heat acts as an external stomach.
An external stomach.
Yeah. When you apply fire to tough fibrous roots or dense animal proteins, you begin the process of digestion outside the human body.
Oh, wow.
The heat breaks down complex molecules, meaning our internal digestive system doesn't have to expend massive amounts of energy processing raw material.
So we basically outsourced the heavy lifting of digestion to the campfire.
We did. And by doing so, we unlocked a massive caloric surplus. The human brain is an incredibly greedy organ. It consumes roughly 20% of our body's resting energy.
That is wild.
Before cooking, we simply couldn't extract enough calories from raw food to support a larger brain without spending our entire day just chewing. By unlocking those easily accessible calories through cooking, we quite literally fueled the rapid expansion of our own cognitive architecture.
We hacked our own biology.
Exactly.
We took this terrifying, chaotic force of nature and used it to trigger our own cognitive upgrade. It is such a powerful image, shifting from subjects running from the lightning strike to masters holding the flame.
It really is.
But even with bigger brains and campfires, we were still nomadic. We were still endlessly chasing migrating herds and seasonal foraging patterns. The next massive leap requires us to stop moving entirely.
Which brings us to the agricultural revolution. This is the pivot from foraging whatever nature happened to passively provide to actively dictating what the earth would produce.
Right.
It required a deep, multi-generational observation of the life cycle of plants. Early humans realized that by isolating specific seeds from the hardiest plants and placing them in fertile soil, they could artificially select for better yields.
And securing a predictable food source meant we could finally put down roots literally and figuratively. We built homes, formed families, domesticated wild animals into livestock, and villages were born.
Yes, the first permanent settlements.
But I really have to push back on the way this era is usually taught. History classes often paint this transition as an idyllic, peaceful enlightenment. You know, humanity finally settling down, farming the land, living in perfect harmony. Wait, putting a bunch of humans in one place permanently? That sounds like a recipe for massive drama and conflict over who gets the best land and water.
Oh, you are completely right. It was incredibly turbulent. You were trading the resilient, highly varied diet of a hunter-gatherer for a massive reliance on just a few staple crops.
Which is super risky.
Extremely risky. Skeletal remains from early agriculturalists actually show a decline in overall health. They were shorter, suffered more from malnutrition during crop failures, and by living in such close proximity to domesticated animals, they exposed themselves to the very first waves of zoonotic diseases.
Not to mention the sheer social friction. You are taking tribes used to roaming vast territories and telling them they all have to share the same small footprint of land indefinitely. That is a recipe for intense, immediate conflict over who gets the most fertile soil, who controls the irrigation channels, and whose sheep are overgrazing the commons. If someone dams the river upstream, you can't just pack up your tent and walk to the next valley anymore. Your entire genetic and caloric investment is anchored in that specific dirt.
Which forces the invention of something entirely unprecedented, which is invisible infrastructure.
Invisible infrastructure.
Yeah, because of these high-stakes resource conflicts, densely packed communities were at constant risk of tearing themselves apart. To survive proximity, early humans had to invent complex social hierarchies, property laws, and mediation systems.
It makes me think of civilization as an operating system.
Yeah.
The mud brick houses, the granaries, the irrigation ditches, that's all just the hardware.
Okay, yeah.
But hardware is useless if it's constantly crashing. The invisible rules, the leadership, the shared moral values that is the software running in the background, keeping the human hardware from destroying itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, civilization is not just buildings and agriculture. Civilization is fundamentally the invisible social order, rules, and moral values that keep us from destroying each other.
That makes so much sense.
And once you have that operating system stabilized, and you have a reliable caloric surplus safely stored in the granary, you introduce a brand new variable into the human experience: free time.
Here's where it gets really interesting. For millions of years, our only goal was frantically trying to keep the engine running, just securing enough calories to survive until tomorrow. But agriculture eventually fills the tank completely.
Right.
And when humans aren't spending every waking second hunting or foraging, they start looking around. It's like, this is the moment humanity upgraded from the basic survival model of a car to the luxury edition. We weren't just putting gas in the tank anymore, we were picking the destination.
They allocate that newly freed processing power toward abstract thought. We see this cognitive surplus explode in the archaeological record. Take cave paintings and early symbolic art.
Right, proof of emotional expression.
Exactly. This wasn't utilitarian. It was humanity externalizing emotion and memory. It's the inception of information storage outside the human brain.
And that scales up into complex language, right?
Yeah.
Signs and sounds to exchange ideas. We move way beyond basic survival communication into abstract concepts.
Yes, you could negotiate a trade, recount a complex historical myth, or plan a massive architectural project for a future that hadn't happened yet.
And alongside this explosion in abstract thought comes a massive, intensely practical leap in material science, the mastery of metals. We transition from chipping stone to literally manipulating the molecular structure of the Earth.
It's an incredible technological leap. Copper, then bronze, then iron.
But the mechanics of that transition are wild, because you can't just hold a rock over a campfire and melt it into a sword.
Not at all. Smelting copper, for instance, requires temperatures nearing 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which you're not getting from a standard cooking fire.
No. That necessitates the invention of forced air kilns, manipulating oxygen flow to supercharge the fire. But while copper is relatively easy to work with, it is soft. The true technological revolution arrives when humans figure out the chemistry of bronze.
Right. They realize that if you take copper and mix in a tiny, specific amount of tin, the resulting alloy is exponentially stronger than either of the original ingredients.
It is a profound manipulation of atomic structures. Copper atoms arrange themselves in a lattice that has natural slip planes, which is why the metal bends easily.
Okay.
But tin atoms are larger. When you melt them together, the tin atoms embed themselves in the copper lattice and act as physical roadblocks, completely disrupting those slip planes.
Wow.
The metal locks up, becomes incredibly rigid and durable.
Which changes everything. Suddenly, your plows don't break when they hit a rock, meaning you can farm harder soil and yield even more food. And of course, your weapons become vastly deadlier, allowing you to conquer neighbors who are still using stone or copper.
And this technological arms race eventually leads to the heat mastery required to smelt iron. Iron is far more abundant than tin or copper, but infinitely harder to extract and forge. Once iron becomes the standard, the efficiency of human labor skyrockets and populations explode.
And with those massive populations, society naturally stratifies. Because one iron plow can do the work of 50 men using digging sticks, not everyone needs to be a farmer anymore.
Exactly. You get intense specialization. You get dedicated blacksmiths, professional soldiers, merchants, and ruling classes.
And crucially, a priestly and philosophical class.
Right. When a highly specialized society frees a specific subset of its population from physical labor entirely, those individuals have the luxury to look up at the night sky and ask, why are we here?
Yeah.
This era marks the shift from simply living to searching for the meaning of life. This is the exact pivot point where civilization transforms into humanity.
It's an incredibly inspiring trajectory. You start with a terrified nomad hiding from a thunderstorm, and you end up with an iron-wielding philosopher looking for meaning in the universe. We are so conditioned to view human progress as this clean, unbroken line on a graph just constantly moving up and to the right.
We really are.
We assume every generation naturally inherits the knowledge of the last, adding to it, getting smarter and more advanced.
It is a comforting narrative, but it is fundamentally flawed.
Because our historical roadmap for today completely shatters that assumption. We need to talk about the Proto-Elamite civilization.
The Proto-Elamites are a brilliant and haunting example of why history is not a gentle upward slope. They thrived roughly 5,000 years ago in what is now southwestern Iran.
Right.
This was not a primitive settlement. It was a highly sophisticated node of human progress. They had monumental architecture, complex agricultural networks, and a highly developed writing system.
But the truly mind-bending part is what happens when modern archaeologists actually dig down into the earth to study them. They don't find a continuous, unbroken story of an empire slowly evolving into the modern day.
No.
They find the Proto-Elamite ruins buried directly underneath what historians call a deluge level.
And we really need to explain exactly how stratigraphy works to understand the terror of a deluge level.
Please do.
When experts excavate an ancient city, they are reading the soil layers in the trench wall, like the pages of a book. You dig down and see a distinct layer of pottery sherds. Below that, a layer of ash from hearths. Below that, the stone foundations of houses. It is a chronological record of daily life.
But then suddenly that record just stops.
It violently stops. A deluge level is a thick, abrupt band of sterile silt, heavy marine sand, or mud. It indicates a massive catastrophic natural disaster, a violent geological shift, a tsunami, or a biblical-scale river flood that completely overwhelmed the landscape.
Unbelievable.
Everything below that sterile layer is the vibrant, complex old world. Everything above it is mud.
So, wait, civilization isn't a straight line. Are you saying it's more like a video game where we build up an incredible society, a natural disaster hits the reset button, and we have to start all over again?
This raises an important question. It confirms that history is a journey full of violent ups and downs. Entire societies have been wiped out. The proto-Elamites prove that progress is not permanent. Their complex writing system, for example, remains largely undeciphered by modern scholars today.
Because the continuity was broken.
Exactly. The linguistic bridge collapsed under the weight of the deluge. There was no one left to pass on the manual. History is deeply cyclical, marked by violent ups and downs where entire bodies of human knowledge have been swallowed by the earth.
That is deeply unsettling, to think that everything a society builds, all the complex software keeping the hardware running, can just be wiped clean by indifferent natural forces.
It is unsettling, but there's a profound takeaway here that speaks to the core of the human condition. The deluge happens, the board is wiped entirely clean. But what happens next?
They rebuilt.
Humans eventually return to the floodplain. They dig through the dried mud, or they lay new foundations directly on top of the ruins of their ancestors, and they stubbornly begin the arduous process of building civilization all over again.
We never stop rebuilding.
No. Our capacity for resilience, our sheer refusal to remain in the mud, is perhaps our most defining evolutionary trait. We adapt, we salvage what we can, and we start the upward climb once more.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening to this deep dive right now, it fundamentally changes how you should view the modern world around you.
It really does.
The comfortable, climate-controlled room you are sitting in, the vast, invisible agricultural supply chains putting food in your local grocery store, the digital operating system connecting us right now, none of this is the inevitable result of a guaranteed upward trajectory.
No.
It is the incredibly fragile product of countless cycles of ruin and rebuilding. It is the result of millions of years of our ancestors struggling, surviving, getting wiped out, and refusing to quit.
But the historical record also functions as a stark warning. We possess a mastery of our environment that the Proto-Elamites couldn't have imagined. Yet the mechanics of a deluge level, whether triggered by tectonic shifts, extreme climate events, or the collapse of our own complex societal software, are still a reality of the planet we inhabit.
We aren't immune to it.
We are not immune to the cycle simply because we have advanced technology. If we fail to maintain a balance with nature, the devastation of the past could absolutely happen again.
We are still playing the exact same game of survival. We've just scaled up the tools. And that brings me back to the very beginning. Think about that vulnerable human in the ancient forest staring at the lightning strike, terrified but overwhelmingly curious. We took that fire. We manipulated the atomic lattice of metals. We built massive, invisible social contracts to keep from tearing each other apart.
We've come incredibly far.
We have. But I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought to mull over. If human history is proven to be this relentless cycle of civilizations rising, specializing, and then being violently buried under a thick layer of sterile sediment, what will our civilization's deluge level look like to the archaeologists of the future?
That is the ultimate question.
When they dig down through the strata and finally uncover our era, will it be a thick band of mud and ash from a natural disaster that overwhelmed us? Or, given our absolute mastery of the physical elements, from splitting the atom to altering the very chemistry of the atmosphere, will our deluge level be something we accidentally created ourselves?